It is the audio mullet. And once again, greatest theme song in podcasting. You can't take that away from us.
It is.
We are
the best part of the show.
By far.
The show's over. That's
Stop listening.
Thanks, Perry. Thanks, Perry Farrell.
Perry
Grip.
Perry Grip.
Yes, you guys should look him up on YouTube. He has amazing videos.
Ollie Grip.
I have heard some of his stuff. I did not know about him before you enlisted him to do our theme song, and I enjoyed a lot of his stuff. So thank you.
He's
Perry.
fantastic. And Mike is a music snob. So for Perry Grip to pass that taste test, the guy's got the goods.
He does indeed. And this podcast is, of course, the out of fashion, mullety talk where we talk about things that are long out of our cultural fashion. And those things are, I don't know, honor, manhood, masculinity, tips about toenails and teeth, beauty, truth, religion, God, Jesus Christ. Huh?
You brought the big gun in.
Oh, yeah. So turn it off now.
Everyone's hair stood up a little bit like,
my speaking of that, we were in church the other day and my wife was inspired and she was raising her hands in church. You know, doesn't that make that if somebody came in, they would be disgusted.
Yeah, I did that too. I was in the back. I was an usher this Sunday, so I was even in the back, so no one could even see me. And I put my hands up, and I felt extra psycho because no one could see me.
That is extra psycho.
That is when you're just swaying. You're in the music, then, man. And that was another thought that I had. Is I go, what if someone took a picture of this right now and put it online? Like, I would look like a total Pentecostal psycho. Oh, the other favorite thing is they sent off our music whatever they call him, worship leader is leaving the church to go do some other ministry. And so they did the thing where they tell everyone in the church to point your hand out toward them during prayer.
Yeah,
sure.
That always feels very Gandalf. Yeah.
And I always think, like, if they took a picture of that, it would look like a Nazi rally. They'd be like, look at the church doing their Sig Heil signal. I look at the whole congregation. I go, man, someone better not be taking a picture of this.
I always want to do after video effects and have lasers shooting at everybody's hands into the person. Beaming out.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah, it feels like you're all aiming your energy.
You're going, what is this paganism? Am I shooting something at them? What is this? Is the Holy Spirit guided by? Am I a conduit now? Bzz. In that direction, I'm an antenna. Bzz. Yet it works.
Hey, but holding your hands up and all of the stuff we just talked about, that is like a mullet. It looks so out of fashion, but it is the coolest thing ever. And so today we have one big topic. We're going to talk about the important men in our lives. That's right. Turn it off now if you don't like men, because we're going to talk about good men, influential men. And then we're going to talk once again, this is man related. Should we call it parent tip? No, it's dad tips. We have some hot takes. And some
Wait, I got to write this down because I have to do some show prep real quick. What is this we're doing?
Dad pro tips.
Dad pro tips.
Things you've learned as being a dad. Shortcuts, manipulation, tricks.
Can I do the thumbnail thing again?
That's gonna be your answer every time.
Every single thing that Doug's tips are involve chewing off a large yellow fingernail.
That was from the previous episode. For those,
but we should do it out of order now, just to confuse them.
They might be out of order, so it could be a spoiler alert. Who knows?
Yeah, that too.
What that means is
wait till the next episode. Wait till the next episode when I talk about my thumbnail.
Yes. So now they'll have to dive into the whole pile of episodes just to find it. So you have to listen to every minute of Audio Mullet. All right. So Ethan, kick it off. Make it happen.
The men in our lives. Okay. Well, for me, I was raised with pretty much my dad was gone by the time I was. He was gone most of my childhood, and
so this is a happy story.
Yeah. So I needed some good men in my life, and it really did. It had a huge impact on me when I got older, and I found. There's a couple. I don't know if we're just doing one or a couple, but one of the men who definitely had a huge impact on me was a guy named Pete Kirk. He has since passed on, but he was this old prayer warrior. I first met him when my own dad was homeless, and they were allowing him to park his van that he lived in their yard and live with them and do carpentry work for them. But later, after my dad had moved away, I was just a little kid then. Pete was involved with our Young Life group, which is Young Life was where I found Christ and where I found my faith. It's a teen ministry.
What age were you then? How old were you?
High school.
Okay. So fairly later than I thought.
Oh, really? I mean, yeah, it's weird. It's a whole thing. We'll do an episode where we just talk about our whole crazy history. But, so Pete was kind of the old prayer warrior guy who his whole job was basically to stand upstairs and pray the whole time that club was going on. Club was this, every week we'd have teenagers come, and most of the teenagers actually weren't in the church. It was a ministry to teenagers. So we put on this fun thing called club, and they'd come and then they'd give a talk at the end. And, anyway, so Pete was the prayer warrior. Like, he'd stand upstairs, he'd walk around, he'd pray, and he's just very serious. So when I became a leader, they assigned him to me as my mentor, and we started meeting every Saturday morning.
Cool.
And
cool.
He's a guy that he carried around this tattered giant Bible that had like a duct tape cover because he like had to duct tape it back together. He's tall,
what
like
a bigot!
Super tall. Yeah.
What a loser!
He had kind of this old Brooklyn accent. He was from New York. He used to be he's a veteran. And we'd meet up, and he'd show up my house. He had this. He talked like this. He talked like an old Brooklyn guy, and he'd always kind of like lick his lips when he talked. And he'd wake me up on Saturday morning. I knew it was like 8 o'clock. I never woke up there. I was always up till like 4 a.m. He'd be like, put some cold water in your face, splash some water. Let's go, come on. And he like make me splash cold water in my face, and like I couldn't say no. Like I had to go, and we'd walk. It was about a mile walk to the place where we were going to have our breakfast. It was the thing I would never do without Pete making me do it. And I'd go there, and then we'd have our pancake breakfast or whatever. And he'd always like, scold me for getting a giant stack of pancakes. We'd read a book of Proverbs, a book of Psalms, and then we would read a book from the New Testament or an Old Testament. I can't remember what we did. We just read one book that whatever he was in at the moment. So it was usually like a 2-hour breakfast. And sometimes I'd have a friend with me, and they'd end up being kind of forced along for the ride, and they would have no idea what they were in for. And he was very, very conservative and very traditional. He'd say things like the Catholic Church, as an aside, he'd say, which is satanic.
Oh dear!
Because he had come out of the Catholic Church, and he would say stuff like that very boldly, like certain things are satanic and stuff. In fact, I was in a rock band.
Yeah, like music with drums, which is satanic.
Yeah, and he came to my concert one night, and the next morning we had our breakfast. And he's like, it makes me wonder that, because he talked about how the music is destroying eardrums and it's just damaging, and there's only, it seems like it's the only point of it. And he said, I think it's satanic. Like he literally told me he thought my music was satanic.
Oh, I love this guy.
And I actually was like, yeah, I think he might be. It didn't bother me that he said that. Like,
hey, there's something to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
So what about this guy? Like, I mean, he sounds like a character. Did you know his character at the time? Were you aware of like, this is a good guy that I should be hanging with? Or was he just kind of like, he was a force of nature and you just did it and then realized in retrospect?
I think it was like, he was deeply sincere. He had all these, I think part of it was just that he had, well, going back just a little bit, this is weird, but I had this friend, and his mom was this obnoxious woman who talked for like 4 hours and she wouldn't shut up, and one of those people that you just try to get away from, you can't. But there's one moment where she said to me when I was just around high school age, maybe just a little bit older, and she said this quote, which is a really cheesy, like fortune cookie quote, but it's had an impact on me and it stuck with me. And that's that the fool doesn't learn from their mistakes. The smart person learns from their mistakes. The wise person learns from other people's mistakes. And that stuck with me. And I from that moment on, I really did start to value what older people have to say. And like, and so it did kind of set me up to listen to him. And he's one of the guys that has a lot of sayings. Like he'd always talk about, how the richness of family, he would say, have a full quiver, keep your quiver full. Like they had like 7 or 8 kids, and he'd always be like, we lived in a 1-bedroom house down in Coquille. We were happy as a clam. Like he always thought we would be happy as a clam. And that's kind of stuff like that. And he had a garden, and he would listen to opera, and he'd walk around in his garden and check out all this. He was really proud of it. And I don't know. I think it was just partially just him being him, but he also was like on his deathbed, his last words were him telling his wife, like, everybody who they need to keep praying for. Like, he's just listing off, don't forget the Johnsons down the street, their son has cancer, blah, blah, blah. And he's just, as he's dying, he's just saying, don't forget to pray for blah, 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 blah. Like, the man believed so deeply in prayer. And as a person who, like, I always constantly struggling with my faith and, like, why I'm always trying to figure it out. I think I did, like, I just look at his life, and I remember when he died, he died at his funeral. This is just kind of a moment, but he, because he's in the military, they're supposed to play taps, but these people didn't have a horn player around, and so they tried to play a CD player, and it just skipped all. It's this terrible, horrible moment. Skipping taps. And so later that night, me and my friend Brandon, who's also in my rock band, we all loved Pete. We around his back patio. It's nighttime, and Brandon has a trumpet, and he can play it. He gets it out, and he played taps into the night that night over out of the bay. And oh man, like even just thinking about it right now, I'm tearing up.
Yeah, that the youth that hippie rock and rollers
we did it.
That.
And he impacted us like that. It says a lot about him, and I think, but he was his own mullet. Like, I think most people our age thought he was lame, this old lame prayer guy with a giant Bible, but he had a huge impact on that handful of us who just saw just a genuine guy who he was selfless. He was really selfless. And
a guy who gave up his Saturday mornings to some kid for no or I don't know about for no reason,
and I'd see him around town with some other guys. Like, he had all these people he did this with. Like, and it felt like it was just us, but I know that because he really did. And he would let me borrow books from his library. He had this library of all these books, and he let me borrow them. Anyway, yeah, great guy.
Wonderful.
And I do remember when he died, it felt like I had moved away up to Portland. So he was from Coos Bay, the small town I was from, and my faith was dwindling more and more. Like, I was just hanging by a thread when I moved to LA for a while there. And, or no, it wasn't LA. I'd moved to Portland. And when he died, I came back for his funeral. We had that night where my friend played taps and everything. And it felt, I think it happens often when a person dies, you feel this giant empty chasm in life. Everything that they contributed is now gone. And I think that, I started wanting to seek that. It started me on a new path to take myself and my faith more seriously when he was gone.
And here's I have a weird question for you, but I have a reason for asking this. Do you ever dream of him, or have you ever dreamed of him?
Gosh, you know what? I'm so bad at remembering my dreams. I hardly ever remember them, but I want to say I feel like I have, but I can't remember.
Okay. Yeah. No, people who are important in my life, I've had these weird experience, and there's a handful of people who I consider, of that importance in my life, but I always have a dream of them. And I always just think, wow, was I granted this dream, or is this just something that happens? But I was just curious. And what is your biggest takeaway from him? Do you remember one thing, or is it just all the time you loved him? You loved him at the time, right? It wasn't annoying to you? No, yeah, it wasn't. There was certain things about him that were just kind of funny, and there's sometimes just long-winded, and he often would, like, while he was talking and eating at the same time, like a little piece of pancake would start to travel across his mouth, and then like. When he would say a P word, like, they would shoot across the table at me, and I have to dodge it. But he, like one of Doug's toenails.
Yeah. He has similarities to Doug. He's tall guy.
Not that we know that story yet, because they won't know about it till the next episode, or the last. Whichever one makes Mike's job harder.
I think that it was more that I think up until Pete, it opened me up to the idea of the goodness of tradition and taking your faith seriously. But I think just the stuff that was considered hokey by my generation, like he was very much into like the tradition of like we always read the proverb, we always read a psalm, like having those patterns and.
How long did you end up meeting with him? Like what duration of time? A year?
I had to be 5 few years, 3 years maybe.
Wow.
He was your mullet, man.
It would come and go, I loved it. But anyway, it was great. I miss it. I do miss it.
All right, say his name again?
Pete Kirk.
Pete Kirk. Doug, who do you got? Who's your guy?
I have so many guys. It's hard to pick out one, and I'm assuming I could do my dad, but that's too easy, right? To do your dad.
Yeah, that's too easy. That's like saying your favorite book is the Bible. Come on, man.
Yeah, true. Okay. So, and old is a key, right? They have to be older than you because it couldn't be you guys as my peers or my college buddies or things like that. It's got to be old guys in our life, right?
Yeah, I think that younger, that influence from the younger thing, I think is more interesting to reflect on. But choose who you want.
I mean, I would bet I have 100 old men in my life because from early on, I always collected people. I collect people is my favorite thing to do. And I always just loved old men. I just thought they were, because I was always looking for wisdom and I never found it in my peers and in my generation. So our Nazarene church, that I went to had a bunch of old men that like in high school were really influential on me they were peach farmers or they were, our Sunday school teachers, and they'd take us camping and they would do Bible studies with us year after year. They grew up with us, or we grew up with them under their care. And they were just kind of normal blue collar people of the soil. I was raised in Denair, a tiny farm town out, in the Central Valley of California. So it was very, farmy and these were very basic people, they're not all culturally cool or anything.
Right.
So probably the biggest influence on me would be my Sunday school teacher. He was actually technically for the kids older than me. So my brother was in his care, but they'd let us tag along, and it was Daryl Nutcher. And he was a TV repairman, lived on the outskirts of town. I remember we would get to go to his house all the time, and we would play speed card games, nerds and stuff like that, and just eat cookies, have punch, and he would sit down and give us a little Bible study. And it was always like a pretty normal kind of white bread, read an anecdote from a devotional or something, or my utmost for his highest or something, and then read some scripture. And oftentimes we would sing together because his wife played the organ in the church, played the piano also. And I just think through the years, this is the guy that I was probably under his influence for, I'd say 10 years, 8 years, 10 years. Every VBS, if we had to volunteer, he'd lead us, and he had a cabin and he'd take us camping. And I just remember having so much fun. And what's weird is I remember being a high maintenance kid, like just a squirrely kind of clown guy, or, you know what I mean? And like not saying thank you and things like that, where I'm positive I didn't give him something back. So his love was always a true symbol of God to me, because he didn't have anything to gain by having all his kids around him. We were I
100% believe that. You were a squirrely kid who gave nothing to him. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Gave just normal animal kids. But, he'd be there for your graduation. He'd show up at your graduation.
Wow.
He knew
this is a good guy.
Details about the life. I was always praying that my dad would be saved, and he was always there to pray with me and was working just with me, being like, we're going to get your dad. We're going to get your dad. And I always used to think like, these pedestrian dummies, they don't know my dad when they say that. These such cute little people of faith. They don't realize what kind of an atheist, hardened, vitriolic against Christianity. Of course, now he's a Christian. So I want to go back to all those people. I've gone back to the church and told many of them, like, you were right. I didn't have, for being an imaginative guy, I was a failure of imagination on my part. So probably Daryl Nutcher. Daryl Nutcher is my guy.
Daryl Nutcher?
Nutcher is a great last name.
It's such a great name.
Nutcher, yep.
And did you say, is he still with us?
I believe so. I haven't checked into my hometown in a long time, back in Denair. I know my mom knows of him, so yes, he's still with us.
Oh, fantastic. Daryl Nutcher and Pete Kirk, right? Is it Pete? Is that right?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Pete Kirk.
Yeah.
Technically, I called him Peter Kirk Sr. because he had a son. Pete.
Well, my guy is, mine's a little bit of a departure because he's I actually can't say his name just because, I don't know, his family might not, I didn't get permission, so, but it's pretty.
Somebody famous? We'll guess
no.
Tom Hanks or something.
Yes, my he's most influential on me.
Most influential. It was Robin Williams, most influential man in his life.
It was David Carradine. No, it was...
What a way to go. What a way to go.
Ooh.
Ew, boy.
Way to end on a high note.
No, I grew up in a suburb of Chicago, and then when I was in junior high, we moved to a small town in Wisconsin, and it was a small town, and the school did not suit me well, and I was into like music, and I played piano and stuff like that. It just didn't, it didn't go over well, but a substitute teacher for 1 year came in, and he was this old guy, smelled of cigarette smoke, was constantly smoking, wore a rumpled jacket, and he just came in and made it clear, like, I'm here for 1 year because my retirement funds aren't holding out. And he was the greatest, like the most cynical. He didn't want to be there, but he had gusto and he had humor, and it was just the way that he treated me, because he recognized, okay, this guy, he's into music, he's into plays, and he's into writing, and so I'm going to tease him. And so I came in one time because he seemed like an exotic figure. He had done art direction in the Twin Cities, which meant, like Minneapolis, St. Paul. He'd done actual
time
professional stuff, and now he's slumming it at this tiny high school. And so to impress him, I carried in a book one time, a thick tome of like Saul Bellow or something that I took from my parents and set it on the desk. So like he would be, well, you're reading this. And I just remember him coming down and like putting one finger, just like tapping on the book, and then arching an eyebrow at me like,
oh,
and then, but didn't say a word. And I just like melted in shame. Like, you are obviously not reading this. And he knew, but so we sort of became, friends in he was very professional about it, but he liked me. And so, I would meet with him after school and things like that. And he would talk about writing and things. And then, so I went to college early. I was in college when I was 16 years old, which is another thing. I was Doogie Howser.
Mm-hmm.
And one time I had a few beers in college, and I called him because he said once, when you get to college and you're going to, and I got the lead in, Macbeth or something. And he said, just keep in touch. So I called him. I drunk called my teacher. And I just remember him going,
oh, dear.
Oh, Michael. Oh, dear. Oh, hang up the phone. I love you. Hang up the phone.
Yeah.
It was
you don't want to do this.
It was so gentle and nice. And then when I saw him in person a couple years later, I had, because of Macbeth, I remember him stopping and like putting a hand on a hip and going, when shall we three meet again? Just quoting the first line of Macbeth. And it was very sweet. So it was just him who, encouraged me to, just love. He loved it. He loved it all. And so it was a huge influence on me. So
neato.
Yeah, not so much on my life. His first name was Ken.
Oh, you can't say it.
His first name was Ken. I won't say his last name. He's long since passed on. He was a old fellow. He had
why can't you say his name? He's gone.
Well, I think his wife and family still live in the area. I just,
Yeah. Okay.
But anyway, good man, and really fun to sort of appear out of nowhere, in this small. I felt like, oh, he's here just for me, and then he's going to retire. He had, of course, lived an entire life and raised an entire family and everything.
Wow.
But a good guy.
Cool.
So these are our men. They are Ken, Pete Kirk, and what? Daryl Dutcher? What?
Daryl Nutcher. And it's weird how they're all guys that just kind of volunteered or spent their life helping youth.
Yeah.
All three of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember one of the acts of kindness of this guy. He taught a theater class that was like an elective thing, but it was, fully, you got all the creds and all of that. And there was a person who clearly did not want to or need to be there, but just did it and thought it was going to be, a lark. And they did because you had to make a diorama. You had to design the stage. You had to design a whole theatrical production. That was the end of the semester, whatever. And this person did Murder at the Cathedral, that play. And so they designed the diorama, which they obviously just bought or something. And then when they got up to make their presentation, the person in high school, and I swear this is true, called it Murder at the Cathedral. And, this is for the final. and Ken,
Murder at the Cathedral.
And I remember Ken just I'm sure he wished he had his pack of smoke. I mean, he had him on him, but he couldn't smoke in the classroom. He just I remember him just lightly rubbing his forehead and then going, darling, can we stop? It's cathedral, but go on.
She's all, that's your interpretation. That's just your opinion, man.
Yeah. So that was 3 months of study for that, and she still hadn't nailed the word cathedral. So, but he was very kind, and I remember laughing with him afterwards. But he didn't. He just said, "Well, she's learning. She's smarter now." So,
excuse me while I go to college. At 16. How'd you end up going to college at 16? Did you skip ahead a grade, or did you just test out?
I tested out. My mother died when I was very young, and there was a Social Security benefit for college at the time that was going to be eliminated. And so if you graduated early, you could take advantage of it. So lots of kids did it. Not in my school. Lots of kids across the United States did it. And it turns out it amounted to not that much, and it probably wasn't a good idea for my life, but that's another story. Yeah. So there you go. There's our men.
I highly recommend people, young men, if there's any young guys listening, find an old guy to have breakfast with on Saturdays.
Well, we need to help be the old guys to make sure that we reach out to some other kid and give back. It's like it's three of us have a responsibility, it sounds like.
Ethan, get older, would you? And
I know I need to get older.
Yeah, get older.
I would like to find another old man to have breakfast with. I feel like
compared to a high school kid, though, you're old. They look at your beard, see a couple white whiskers, like, hey, old man Ethan.
Yeah.
I remember going to a bar one time when I was, 17 or something. You used to be able to do that because no one cared because you were almost 18, which was the drinking age. So
that was the drinking and driving age back then.
Yeah, that was fine. It was, it's a small town. And I went in and there was I somehow got sat next to a guy who was 89 and had been in World War II. He was an old guy in World War II. That's how old this guy was. So he was telling me stories of that, and I just, my friends were like, come on, man, we're going. Let's play pool or whatever. I was like, no. There's an old guy here telling. And I spent the whole night with him. And when I got home, my parents were like, what did you do tonight? And I guess I just, wore them out talking about this old guy. I met this old dude.
Yeah.
They're like, go to bed. For
God's
sake.
Bars are a bad influence on our son. He should be shooting pool and throwing dice.
That's right.
Talking to World War II vets. What's wrong with our kid?
All right. Well, let's take a short break, and we'll be back with our what do you call them? Our pro tips, pro dad tips. What do we call them?
Pro tips.
Dad pro tips. All right. We'll be right back.
It's going to be a hair frosting segment on getting your tips done. Okay, go ahead.
It's all toenail based. This is Audio Mullet. All right, we're back We are men. We talked of men. This is Audio Mullet, by the way, in case you forgot what you were listening to in that short period where we were away. Doug, did you get
featuring Michael J. Nelson,
Doug
Ethan
TenNapel.
Nicolle. Yeah, I got to step all over you to be as unprofessional.
Let's keep doing that. Let's do that for a full minute of just stepping.
Okay, Ethan,
we have. Hang on, we have two.
Okay, what do you mean?
What? No, you go.
Okay, all three. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Ethan Nicolle.
Okay, what?
Michael J. Nelson.
Michael J.
And Doug
TenNapel. There, I think we nailed it. I think we got it, guys.
Yeah, use that one.
All right, slate it. We're smooth. There it is. We're going to put that on the ads. We talked about men. We are men, and now we're going to talk further, sort of mannish, but I believe we will also be talking about females here. So if you are a female, stay tuned. This is Dad Pro Tips. This is where we are all, I think, pretty experienced fathers, right? I consider myself one, guys.
I've laid some track.
What does that mean?
I'm the least experienced, but I'm about 5 years in, and I got 4 kids.
That is.
I've installed some cable in that world. Yeah.
I've pasted some cordite onto some explosive.
I've done some caulking.
I've tuck pointed a few chimneys in that area. If I'm not if I'm not boasting to say that, if you know what I mean.
I've placed 20 square feet of kitchen ceramic tile in that field.
Oh, I've jigsaw cut. All right, I'm done.
All right.
Yeah. So, Doug, you have how many children? Let's run it down. Let's run down our families to give the people our experience and our wisdom, so that we give our creds up front.
Yeah, all of my amazing Dad Pro tips, for which I think I'm only going to share one, really did come in handy when you have 4 kids.
4.
Age 11 to 16. Girl, boy.
What caused you to commit this rash act of having 4 children?
Ange and I were married for 10 years, and our cat collection got up to 4. And we looked around at life and we said, something is wrong. Something's missing.
You looked at your mullet. There's a toenail going through your teeth. You got a mullet. There's cats running around. When you went
combing my mullet with my toenail, and I'm just going, something is missing. It's weird. We went from 4 cats to 4 kids within 4 years.
Wait,
crazy science.
Was that a scheme, or did you notice that in retrospect?
Well, we didn't plan it, no, but it's just, that's the synchronicity of the universe, man. It's serendipity.
Tell me about the difference of smell of your house between the 4 cats versus 4 children. How did the odors change?
It got much better.
Wow. See, that's an endorsement for children, everyone.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, man, cat crap, when you have 4 of them taking a dump, that is a pungently foul, awful, rotting meat. Methane odor in those cats. They just have, there's no tact. So at least a kid packs it in a diaper, and Angie's changing all that. I had to change the litter box. She changed the diapers. So I protected her for 10 years, and then she protected me for 10 years.
And what is your pro tip now that you have how many combined years of experience? Given that, what is it, 11?
17. Oh yes, that's math.
Well,
I got the calculator here.
Okay, go ahead. Give it.
Okay, I have a 17-year-old, I think, a 15-year-old, somewhere around there, 13-year-old, and an 11-year-old.
And we're waiting for the
17, 13, 11, and what?
Mike could do this in his head.
I know he could. I'm bad at my touch screen.
It's like, I don't know,
17,
40 years?
13, 11, and what?
Oh, my God. This does not speak so well.
Mike was just kind of throwing it away, Ethan. I don't know why we're breaking out the abacus right now. Get the
you're serious. I told you I have the calculator out.
All right, so let's just say,
around 40-something.
Decades of experience.
Oh, yeah. This is why I'm from California. That's why we say lots.
Oh, all right. So given all these many, many years of experience, what is your pro tip, Father Doug?
Dad pro tip is always set arbitrary rules.
Oh,
That's a good one right there. So
wait
for
a
instance,
minute.
yeah, arbitrary.
Yeah, go.
Because you're dad and you're the law. You're not just the law keeper in the house. You're the lawmaker. So an arbitrary law would be something like, you know how, like no games without exercise. So like they all want to get on their screens and they all want to play video games.
Screen time argument, sure.
And you just look at them with a straight face and you go, there's no screens without exercise. And there's no question because it kind of makes sense. And you're saying it in a way that this is a family law.
Yeah.
And if you catch them playing games and you come down and you reinforce that, you go, hey, did you exercise? And they'll just put the controller down and go, no. Deep down inside, I'm going like, sucker. Okay. So that's one arbitrary. Another arbitrary tip is, you know how we went into this a little bit with Chesterton, last episode, which might be the next episode, that kids repeat things all the time.
Yeah.
So kids just endlessly would repeat some stupid saying. It doesn't even matter what it is. It would just be like, nuh-uh. Or it would just be something funny that they heard on SpongeBob. I ripped my pants.
Like something crude, yeah.
Yeah, I ripped my pants. And it was really obnoxious, in fact, when I didn't understand what they were even talking about. It would be some weird, like, saying in a weird, awful voice that I didn't find.
Yeah.
And I would just announce the rule, and this has been a rule for a long time because of how long I've had kids. It would just be no saying it more than 5 times. and it just became a law. And after a while, a kid would repeat the same thing over and over again. Another kid would tell him, hey, no saying it more than 5 times. So it's just arbitrary rules.
Yeah.
It is part of a dad's responsibility. I'm saying that is a tool that you have in your kit to help negotiate things. Arbitrary laws that make some kind of sense. You can throw those out there and back them up, and it'll just become a family law. That's a dad pro tip.
I love it. It reminds me there was a comedian who's was a pal of ours. I haven't spoken to him in years, but used to be a friend of mine. I think he still works in L.A. And one of his routines.
Oh, Robin Williams. Yeah, I don't think he still works in L.A., Mike.
Robin Williams? What happened? Did I skip a news cycle? What's up with Robin, my good buddy?
Effort that. Just effort it after the show.
Well, I'll call David Carradine after this and get the scoop.
Yeah.
Get on dark. That's dark. All right, I'm sorry. No, he had a joke about the arbitrary rules of his parents, and one of them that I just always made me laugh. He'd go, "No laughing in the basement," and that was just. And he would go, as a kid, he'd go like, "What? What do you mean? What?" I was like, "Well, what are you going to do? That's the rule. No laughing in the basement."
Yep. Fact right there.
Yeah,
Fact.
I like that. That one I think I have used with my kids. Ethan, your dad pro tip.
All right. Well, I've been a dad for about 5 years now, but I got 2 step kids and 2 of the other normal kind, and
2 real kids.
2 real kids and 2, yeah. And my 2 main things. One, I don't understand parents who don't use allowance. Allowance to me, it solves all, because when I first met my wife, she had her 2 kids, and it was constantly, you're at the store and they're like, I want that. Why can't I get that? And you just have to come up with some reason. But when you have allowance, you just go, you can get that. Just save your allowance. And that's the answer every time. And I've had my kids, like, they want a thing and they save up and they get it. And it's great. So
I like that. I like that.
I don't understand people who don't do allowance. Like, it's just it just takes that whole debate away every time. It's constant.
Yeah. That's technically an arbitrary law, though. That does fall into my category.
Yeah, it's like, why the number? Like, why? Like right now we just have the number that, like, Lily's 12, she gets $12 a week. Ezra's 8, or 9, he gets $9 a week. And part of the deal is I got to do a chore, or a couple chores. What their chores are for, they usually get another chore tacked on each year too. But the other one, this is just kind of like this is a trick I played on Ezra recently, but I wanted to see if I could read him an entire classic of some kind, which I've read to them a lot, but so he had some interest for some reason. They had read a little synopsis of Oliver Twist, and he was interested in Oliver Twist. Well, I knew that I wanted to get a new PlayStation, and I knew that he wanted a new PlayStation, and so
you cracked open Pascal.
So I said, if we read Oliver Twist, I will. I did this math and said that every page you get a certain amount of like cents, and we get to the end, I'll split the cost with you, and we can buy a PlayStation. And suddenly he wanted a PlayStation so bad, like we read the entire book of Oliver Twist. And I already knew I was going to get a PlayStation, but I actually got him to sit through the entire book of Oliver Twist and because it's so like I had to explain it to him as he went through, but like he knows the story, like he knows like if you ask him questions, like he knows the details. It's pretty impressive.
That's genius.
But it was fun. It was actually really fun too, and there's parts that are slog, but what amazed me about it is that Dickens is like really meant to be read out loud, I think, and there are parts that really, I don't know, I enjoyed it. But I think he overall enjoyed it. There's parts that were slow, but.
And now he's been trained in being a street urchin too. He knows all the ins and outs.
Taking pockets.
Now he's following. Pockets. Yeah, he's following Fagin around, and
artful dodger.
The hardest part of it was that there was Master Bates, the character name.
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
Charlie Bates, but it constantly calls him Master Bates.
And so it's you snickering every single time.
So I was like, Master Charlie Bates.
Master Charlie Bates, yes. Thank you, Dickens. You little Dickens.
If I'd snicker, then he'd be like, what's that mean?
Yeah, exactly. You cannot break character. You got to go through, just plow through it.
Yeah.
Like reading the Bible, and Abraham tied his ass to a tree and walked 3 miles. Like, I got to get through this. I'm reading it in front of a church.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough.
I can't crack.
like when I read the kids Dr. Seuss, and there's Wanker McSpanker.
Ooh, yeah,
that's real.
That one's really hard to get through. And Big Boob Obsession. That's my other favorite character.
What?
In Dr. Seuss.
What?
You guys haven't read?
Say again. What? You're making this up.
Probably.
Okay.
Or is that the Big Boot Obsession, which is from another episode?
Yes.
Big Boot.
Barn full of rubber boots, ladies and gentlemen. Look it up.
Full of rubber boots is my favorite Dickens character. Barn full
Barney.
Full of rubber boots.
All right, here's my dad pro tip. The first is mundane but important, and it's probably going to come off wrong. The second is will be controversial. For years, Cathedral, murder at the cathedral. My wife was gone a lot in the evenings. She was doing a lot of youth work for churches and various things.
And going to her 12-step group.
Yes, well, she was doing heroin. I mean, no, she was not.
I didn't want to out Bridget, but
yeah, no.
Okay,
so she was doing this youth work, and so I was alone a lot in the evenings with my kids, and I was fortunate enough to have a little space in the basement. There was nothing there. It was just carpeted, and we had things to hit each other with. So I had only boys, so I should explain that. They were boys. And so we would go down there and just beat the crap out of each other for just hours on end and make up games where the point was to beat the crap out of each other or attack one another. And my kids, they're good boys, but they remember that so fondly. Like, remember this game that we used to do where like you were a dragon who, if you were on the second stair, you were, you were sedate, but if you went to the first stair, you would come down and attack it. Oh, that was so good. And then so just beat up, if you have boys, just beat them up all the time with pillows and stuff. I'm talking about pillows and things like that.
Yeah. So you don't go to jail, but you can get your aggression out.
Right.
Is the moral of this story.
But the second tip is that my kids, I spent years doing the manners thing and the shake his or her hand, look her or him in the eyes, say hello, greet them, and they just wouldn't return. It just never happened. And then one day I got frustrated, and I called a little meeting with the two of them, and I said, you know what? You guys look like jerks. People don't like you. People will not like you if you don't do what I'm telling you to do. Do you want to be not liked? And Bridget's going, that is not the way to do this.
Yeah.
And I said, no, I'm done. I can't. I'm just telling you the reality. Like, adults will not like you. And that sort of sunk in, and they became handshakers and lookers in the eye, and they have manners. And I said,
Step aside, Mom.
I'm just being practical. I have no other, the carrot and the stick, all of it's done. You're a jerk. Stop this. and that worked. So that's my pro tip. Thoughts?
I like it.
I guess so. I don't think that would work with my kids because I think I've done the jerk talk with them before.
Oh, have you? See, I guess adjust for your own kids, but that worked for me.
Yeah, I'd have to adjust something else. I don't know. I'd have to probably tell them if you don't shake people's hands and look them in the eyes, you'd probably grow up to be really bad at video games. And they go like, and start crying. Dad, why would you say you're a terrible dad.
Have you you've applied that though? You've said this is the reason you should do it because you will not not be liked, which I think is true, right? I mean, obviously they have to be old enough. My kids were old enough to take that.
Yeah, usually most of the rules that we give them, this is true for most parents, I think. It is, this is so your life will go well, is kind of our bottom line for everything. So it's like, guys, you need to shake hands with people, look them in the eyes, open doors for ladies, please and thank you. So your life will go well. Like they're going like, why this? And I give them that talk of like, this is made to make you a happier person for your whole life and a better person that people want to be around, where it's a pleasure to be around you. Oh, I do have another another pro tip that kind of is a combination of Mike's and Ethan's, the payment method and manners.
On the fly pro tip, give it.
This one's technically a mom pro tip because I did not come up with it. Angie did. We had a rule in our family where anytime someone ever said something nice about our kids, we had to pay our kids $5.
Wait, whoa. Like in the wild nice, like
in the wild nice. So like we never believed they were actually nice because we were convinced, parents are always convinced like their kids are an absolute monster. And then some other family or some other stranger will come to you and go, your kids are so well behaved. Like in a restaurant, if a waiter your kids are so well behaved. It's like, and all the kids look at us and go like, ding, with a big smile. I'm like, you didn't earn that. and we had to pay them. So anytime someone publicly complimented our kids, this is an Angie rule, we had to pay them $5. And it still stands today. If they say something, I ran to Ed and
how much would you say you ended up spending over a lifetime so far?
Well, I'd say probably, I'd guess $150, $120. Like we've heard it
worth it.
12 or 15, maybe 30 times. Yeah, somewhere in there.
And do you think that it actually influences them, or it's just like the payoff for all the other things?
Kids don't think far enough ahead to really follow any rule. Just that's where the terror of dad has to come in, because that they think about more than they think like, I can live with actually being a jerk someday, but I don't want dad to ever yell at me like that again.
I have a
I'll shake.
Speaking of that terror of dad thing, I had one where like we lived in a house in Geneva, Illinois, this old house, and they fixed up the attic for us three, lunatic boys. And the day after he fixed it up, he had these globe lights that were hanging from cords that my dad installed. He was a handyman. And we broke them with a pillow fight, like jumping on the bed. And my dad was gone for the weekend. And my mom did the when your dad gets home thing. And it was like Friday night. And I spent the whole weekend going, well, I mean, it's over. Obviously he is going to kill me. I mean, it sounds like a Bill Cosby routine. May he rest in peace. But it was true. Like I was terrified. Like when she tells him he's going to come in and he's just going to put a knife in my guts and kill me. Yeah. Like I was 100% convinced. And so I was just morose the whole weekend. And my mom was like, what's the matter? What's going on? I was like, no, nothing. And then my dad came home. He's like, you idiots. And he went to the store and bought a new one and put it up. And nothing ever happened.
But he just as easily could have burned the whole house down.
Yes.
Burned it to the ground.
But I don't know, do they actually have that fear anymore that I had? That my dad was, he's a good guy, but he would take out the belt or whatever.
Oh yeah, I know my kids don't fear me and respect me the way I feared and respected my dad, just by what they say. Like they'll just say something, in passing, when they disagree with you verbally. And just say, no, it's not that. Like a real snarkily. I'm going, I never talked to my dad that way. Like he'd I remember talking to my friend John Soares, who edited or co-directed Sock Baby. And one of my kids smarted off to me in front of him and said, like, no, Dad, that's kind of stupid. And I looked at John. I said, John, what would your dad have done if you called him stupid? He goes, he'd probably punch me in the face. I just love that. I go, yeah. But I never even tested that theory out.
Yeah. My dad once, I said, I was in high school. I think I was like a sophomore or something. And I got done with a wrestling match or something. And he's driving me home. And I said, I'm just so pissed that I did that. And he goes, what did you say? I was like, what? You don't you use that language around me, young man. And he like shoved me up against the door. It's like, I thought I was old enough to say the word pissed. Like, no, not in my presence.
Assault. Yeah. I love it.
Wow.
Oh man, no wonder why you're such a good guy. See, our kids are going to grow up. They're just going to be just smart and off to everyone, and they will be really unhappy compared to us too, I think.
I think that's
if you
true.
have a real brutal dad, I think there's a better chance of you being happy. I know there's a lot of stats against that, but just my personal thing is my dad's being so overbearing and so just non-negotiably the totalitarian of the house really gave me like a healthy respect for so many things in life. It tells you that some things are sacred. Some things are sacred is deep in me. That came from him. Yeah.
Well, I think that's it, guys. I mean, we talked about guys. We gave our dad pro tips. I think we're good, right? I think there's a lot of wisdom in this episode. Any final thoughts?
I think on the great men in your life, the great men in your life segment, it's weird because we never brought it up. But when you told the joke about Bill Cosby, it seems like we should have brought that up. And if that was on the table, I think we all might be changing our stories.
You mean even invoking his name or what? We could talk about Cosby in another segment. I'm happy to talk about him because he was a huge part of my childhood.
Great men great men in your life. Very funny, very hilarious. I haven't read the news in the last couple of years, so
it's a bit
I
of
don't
a
know. I don't know what he's doing now, but
I heard he's still funny. I don't know. No, it's actually seriously, it's a big disappointment to my kids because they grew up listening to him and loving him. They didn't know the era that he was in. They just heard his tapes. They didn't see the Cosby Show. Right?
Yeah.
So they're so great. And then
I Slept With is the one. I think.
Yeah. And
now strangely telling.
And Chocolate Cake and all of that. And so my kids now, they will sometimes start to do a Cosby reference, especially my younger son, and then he'll go, oh, and he'll just get a pained look on his face, like, I forgot. We can't even bring him up. Dang, he's like wiped from the book of life. And it's a shame. It really is.
So then he goes on to quote David Carradine in Kung Fu.
What's up with David Carradine? He's still doing good, right?
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying. So it's good that he had a sanctuary to go to in quoting.
I like when we do the joke twice in the show. It works well.
I stole it from you. I stole your format.
All right. Well, we'll be back with another important topic, and we will settle whether or not David Carradine is still doing well on the next episode of Audio.
The Dave Carradine episode of Audio Mullet.
I'm Michael J. Nelson.
Ethan Nicolle.
And I'm Ethan Nicolle.
And this has been another episode of Audio Mullet. So long.